to me, it's like it reinforces the Bitcoin maxis who are basically saying, look, you need a reason to hold the token. Bitcoin has a reason because it's the future of money. There's only 21 million of them. And these altcoins, this utility token thesis is bunk. That's how I see it.
So you said it much better than me. Competition is such a good thing. And that's where I say, okay, if, going back to the earlier point, is this a good thing for Bitcoin and all this stuff? All these areas to attack Bitcoin are a good thing to strengthen Bitcoin, right? And so I think we need to be more vocal about preserving our ability to self-custody Bitcoin, to transact permissionlessly as well as censorship resistant as possible. And all those properties we need to defend fully throated.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Stephan Livera podcast, brought to you by Bold. For American listeners, you can buy Bitcoin at the lowest fees available in the industry and, of course, use the Bold debit card and get the best sats back available. Now, join me on the show for the first time is Rod Roudi. You might know him from Bitcoin Park, and of course has various, many ventures. I probably couldn't list them all. He's doing podcasting with, the SHA-256 and all this stuff. But I know you are organizing some events coming up also. Let's, first off, welcome to the show.
Dude, Stephan, I know everyone says this. I'm honored, big fan. Literally since, I think, 2017, 2018. I don't know. When did you start the pod?
Yeah, July 2018. I think we were talking maybe back then. You were at you were helping out with Bitcoin Magazine and their conferences, right. And for the San Francisco Bitcoin 2019 when a lot of us all met for the first time there, right?
Wild. We put Odell and Marty for their first or second live RHR on the rooftop. We helped just little things that now you guys are all blown up rightfully in such an awesome way that looking back on Bitcoin 2019 in San Francisco is just some great memories come back.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, you're doing a lot on, building communities and things like that. Obviously, I think we've both been very, big on that. Like I've been trying to help organize meetups and things like that back when I was in Sydney and elsewhere, just whenever I go to places. So I know obviously you've done a lot to sort of help grow the Nashville scene also with Bitcoin Park. So yeah, why don't we start a little bit there in terms of kind of trying to grow Bitcoin communities?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, actually, if I could tell a story, and you're in this.
Sure. All right.
It was so we started Bitcoin or started the meetup. I want to say it was August of 2020. Actually, that was when you came. It wasn't 2021. It may have been 21, but it may have been 20. Actually, may have been 21. Anyways, I'm getting my years messed up.
Yeah,
but
I think it's probably 21 because I think that was when I first. I think that's actually when I visited Nashville for actually a libertarian conference. Right?
That's right.
And then
You're
we
right,
had a
21.
little small thing. I think it was Odell and me and maybe a couple other people there.
So we had hosted the month prior, Stephan, in August. The first meetup, and we had no idea if one person, two people would show up. My friend Mills and I, we organized it. And next thing you know, we had I think 15 or 20 people. It was raining. It was at this brewery right in the WeHo area. And it was awesome. I mean, somebody was traveling in from, I think, Philly, and they had been at a conference. They saw the meetup and they were just we got to go to a Bitcoin meetup. And there was a bunch of other people in the local community. One guy, older gentleman, was like, hey man, thank you so much for organizing this. My wife thinks I'm crazy that I'm the only one in this town that likes this Bitcoin thing. So the fact that there's other people like me is just so great. And then I think I saw maybe online, you hit me up, you're like, hey, I'm coming to Nashville. And then I think I was and I knew Odell was coming and I was like, all right. So I moved the meetup back a week and I'm like, hey, do you guys want to come to our meetup and we do a panel together? You're like, yeah, heck yeah. And then next thing you know, we went from 20 people to, it was 100 plus people in that room. And it was off. Ever since then, Stephan, not to boost your ego, it was like a rocket ship. We got, I think Andrew Yang came in and then we talked about custody and other things. And then December, we focused on mining and we did a number of panels Harry Sudak, Kevin Zhang, Econo Alchemist, drove it. It was so amazing and brings back so many fond memories. And that helped leapfrog or catapult us into where we are today with Bitcoin Park.
Well, hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I can't take the credit for it, but
Well,
great job building a community, and I think that's really, as you said, a lot of people feel like they're alone in this, right? They can't
yeah,
meet other because like you feel like are you just part of this community of internet coin weirdos, and now I've met real people at like some meetup or some event, and now it's real for them. So it makes a big difference, right?
it's so funny, and I'm trying to remember the times like when FTX was happening and Luna Coin's happening, and still, even that's why I'm like very anti the altcoins, shit coins, meme coin stuff. It's just, that meme, it's also tiring because undoubtedly, I've been Bitcoin focused for whatever, 2017, so I don't know how many years that is. And I'm literally just saying the same thing over and over, like learn Bitcoin, learn Bitcoin, learn Bitcoin. I actually even have the domain, Stefan, now, notfinancialadvice.com, because I was so tired of just saying, by the way, disclaimer, not financial advice. I don't know what you're going to do. Just learn Bitcoin, buy a little bit, and then continue to learn. But anyways, I say all that is people just need the community just to be able to really discern between the signal and the noise. And like, by the way, I actually at our meetups, I say, hey, go and learn about all these other things that you want to learn about: cryptos, altcoins, NFTs, LFTs. More power to you. I'm not here to judge, but at this meetup, at this summit, at this workshop, we're focused on Bitcoin, the blockchain, the monetary network to serve 8 billion people, as well as Bitcoin, the reserve asset that, in my opinion, preserves my future purchasing power better than any other investable asset ever created. And how cool of a time do we have right now to be living in this? And it's just like, that's where all my time, capital, and reputation could even focus in on. And then when people bring up this investment opportunity or that investment opportunity, I'm like, guys, if you just, do you own Bitcoin? No. Great. Okay. Let's start by learning and owning a little bit of Bitcoin, and then tell me about your investing strategies and all this other stuff that you're so much smarter than me, which 99 out of 100 people are smarter than me. But I think the Bitcoin thing I'm pretty good at.
Yeah, and I mean, it brings up all kinds of things like, even this whole Bitcoin treasury company stuff, the quote unquote paper Bitcoin, of course.
I love the meme summer paper
Bitcoin summer, right? Like I did a panel at the recently Baltic Honey Badger as well. But I think what would be good to touch on is narratives that have changed over time, right?
Yeah.
Because I did a post about this recently on my Substack as well. I was commenting about, and I think this is a common sentiment. I'm not saying this is like unique to me or whatever, but the point is, Bitcoin is winning, arguably, but not in the way most of us thought.
Totally.
Right? Most of us, kind of in the earlier years, or especially in that 2018, 2019 sort of era, definitely the cypherpunk and libertarian ethos is quite strong in the kind of online Bitcoin circles. And I think many of us thought, oh, the way it's going to happen is like people are going to buy it, go on either buy it peer-to-peer, no KYC, or they're going to go buy it on a KYC exchange and withdraw to their cold card or whatever hardware wallet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that was what most of us thought, right? And there was kind of these examples of, Mt. Gox or Quadriga CX, or in later years, obviously FTX, BlockFi, whatever, Celsius.
The list goes on.
Right? But then actually in practice, what's happened is paper Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin treasury companies, and offering this indirect means of exposure rather than a direct exposure. So it's kind of like there's what we thought would happen, and then there's what really did happen. I want to get your reaction on that.
Yeah. So I'm an eternal optimist. So I think and going back to the nostalgia, I think we still celebrate Not Your Keys, Not Your Coins Day on January 3rd, 2009. But I remember back in the day, it was like leading up to it, we would just rally around. We would be trolling the exchanges and be like, look, let's liquidate them. Let's see if they actually have the Bitcoin.
And do a bank run, right? A Bitcoin bank run.
Yeah, Bitcoin bank run. And it was just like the coolest thing. I mean, I remember at first I had a ledger and I'm like, guys, I'm literally looking at the address on this small device. Now obviously I've upgraded my security, but it was just so fun. I mean, and still today, Bitcoin is still so fun. I mean, the UX, all the improvements that have happened in Bitcoin, we could have a whole nother podcast just on that, Stefan. But to your point is, I think that's why it becomes even more important for podcasts like yourself, Odell's Citadel Dispatch, Marty's TFTC, Preston's podcast, Danny's What Bitcoin. I mean, these podcasts that continue to do the signal and stay like with it. And BTC Sessions is doing some great stuff. And actually, I do think there's a meme of like PodConf or something like that, where it's like more
Right.
podcasts, more podcasts. I actually am a believer in more podcasts because we need more niche, like the home mining podcast. You mentioned our Pod 256, like some of these other podcasts. I mean, dude, I do a freaking more institutional focused Bitcoin podcast with Kathy Wood every month
Yeah.
called Bitcoin Brainstorm.
Yeah,
So
this is
we need
great.
all these. Thank you. We need all these avenues, but I think it comes back to the core, which is like, what makes Bitcoin special, in my opinion? The fact that it's like, not to be explicit, it's truly like freedom money, and it's like fuck you money. That for the first time in my life, we have that, such that we could either participate with what we believe is our, local currency and so on, more power to you, or we decide to take that power into our own hands and have some accountability to third parties, meaning like we're custodying our own Bitcoin, we're running our own node to verify the supply of Bitcoin and the monetary network. And there's just so many other just cool things about Bitcoin, right? That you don't need to have these other trade-offs. Now let me go to the other side, which is now all the avenues to come into the summer paper Bitcoin season and so on is just like exponentially increased. The TradFi world of what they're doing, and like, hey, I'm issuing these bonds and doing this, well, way above my pay grade. So I'm not going to even speculate on like what I know about that. But what's really cool to me and what's really cool to see is the small business owners that are taking Bitcoin on their as a treasury strategy and holding it on their balance sheet. And then more and more companies, Stephan, I'm seeing, at least, through various conversations, are figuring out ways to use Bitcoin, especially globally. I mean, that's where if you're looking in the right places, like Calais is like the best follow right now on Twitter. I mean, the stuff that he is shipping with Cashew and what he's doing with BitChat and Jack is just so freak. It feels like 2017, 2018 to me, of the cool stuff that's being built. And that's where, at the end of the day, it's all going to even itself out if Bitcoin's going to win in the long term as the monetary network for 8 billion people and the reserve asset for you, our respective families, and for generations to come. It's going to need these type of challenges. Now, the other question I have, like, I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think there is going to be another Quadriga, another FTX, another Mt. Gox, and at the scale of like and I don't want to name exchanges, but like one of those bigger exchanges that are custodying all the Bitcoin?
I mean, elephant in the room, Coinbase custody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the exact number, but people have said maybe it's like 2 million or maybe more than 2 million BTC. That's the obvious elephant in the room. I think it's like, what is it? All but one of the US Bitcoin ETFs are custodying with Coinbase custody. Many of the large treasury companies and things like this. So obviously, we would like to see, obviously, many of us would like to see further decentralization there, obviously self-custody, or even if not that, at least decentralizing out to more professional grade, institutional grade custodians. At least that would be an improvement than having so much centralization at the Coinbase level, right? So if something catastrophic were to happen there at Coinbase, I mean, who knows, right?
But now, as a fiduciary, right, Stephan, playing that out, and I think and I don't want to speak for Fidelity, but I think they're custodying now their own Bitcoin potentially. I think.
Yeah, I think they do have their own. They were. I think it was their ETF was. I think one of the major ones that did not use Coinbase custody, because obviously they have their own custodian, right? Because they have been around in the space for a while. They have a well-known custodian, so they were kind of one of the few who did not.
Yeah, so I think over time, that's why I'm like really interested, in what companies like AnchorWatch are doing. So we're actually hosting a Custody and Treasury Summit, and we're going to do that in September. But one of the areas why I want to do this is I want to piggyback off the energy of the Treasury conversation, which is a good conversation to have. And so to delineate between, this is a treasury company it's like, I don't want to say a shell company, but that's all they do is just acquire Bitcoin and that's it. Okay. I'm going to put those folks to the side. But then there's also some treasury companies that have a business, that have cash flow, like they're building a business,
like
but they want to
accumulate, or these other ones, right?
Exactly. But that's, I think custody and treasury need to go hand in hand in a conversation. If you have treasury strategies, it's like the next step is like, the first step is like, how are you custodying this? Such that two things. One, custodying it such, you don't have, third party or limiting your counterparty risk. But two, more importantly, is eventually you should want to use that Bitcoin. So like, how do you have different custody options such that you're able to activate and use the Bitcoin in payments, in in a number of different ways. So we're actually, Rob Warren, who's on my team, he does research, education, and programming at Bitcoin Park. He's working on a custody-focused white paper that we're going to release on September 10th and give physically to each of the attendees for the Custody and Treasury Summit, which will be cool.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it's an important conversation. Of course, there's a lot of, there's so many things happening in the space, but getting the right people in the room together certainly can be very valuable, and also just give people a sense of like, okay, what are other people doing here? And I think because you can be talking to different levels, right? You can be like, well, what's the everyday man on the street meant to do when he's self-custodying his Bitcoin? What's like a family office, a small private company, a public company, even a state government or a national or a federal government? What are they meant to do with Bitcoin custody? What is best practice, right? Like, I guess these are some of the questions that need to be asked and answered, and for people to sort of be savvy with what does good look like? What's professional?
Totally.
I know there's a ton of these questions, these kinds of things. Obviously, the pro level custodians have to answer these kinds of questions, like, okay, SOC 2 reporting or whatever other kinds of internal controls they need to demonstrate. Do they have penetration testing? Do they have this? Do they have that? Do they have, address whitelisting? Do they have, all these kinds of controls and things like this? This is all going to form part of the conversation.
Yeah, could I double click into each one of those scenarios? So like you mentioned family offices, you mentioned high net worth individuals, you mentioned businesses, you mentioned state governments, you mentioned all banks. It's really interesting because, okay, so each has a custody and a treasury strategy, but they can have unique different levels of custody. So let's say you have, and I'm always curious to know when I ask people this question, I'm like, okay, you have, let's say 100 Bitcoin, of which what percent goes into deep cold storage that, multi-jurisdictional, it takes like weeks to access, 20%, 30%. Okay, why? Then there's like maybe single sig, cold storage that, you can access that you need to use on a monthly basis. Okay, cool. Then there's like a hot wallet for actual live payments that you're using, day to day, maybe weekly ad hoc payroll to freelancers all around the world, whatever that may be. One thing I don't advocate is, and if you do use if you use a custodian, understand, hey, how does custody work at your brokerage or exchange? If the answer is, oh, we outsource it to XYZ, I would recommend, in my opinion, not going with them. Like, I would go with somebody that's got their own full grown stack, that's custodying their own, the Bitcoin, so that you're limiting, even though you have counterparty risk, you're limiting that risk. So I'm really interested in how people think and how people use their Bitcoin within their own use cases. And that's what I want to amplify and platform, Stephan, is, hey, here's a case study on our workflow that, that's what we want to do at these meetups, workshops, and summits. And then we could either not produce them and publish them, or we can produce them and publish them and share with the broader global community.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think this is also just an evolving conversation, right? Because in earlier years gone by, you would hear like, the most unprofessional would be kind of like funds who just literally had like, I don't know, a treasure in the drawer kind of, and it's just like, guys, or even worse than that, and then you'd hear like, okay, exchanges, they might keep some in the cold and some in the hot wallet, and that's at least, that's a good start. But then it's like, okay, what kind of policies do they have? What kind of access controls do they have on that? Like, there's all these, it's a very, you can go really to a very deep level if you're talking at like a professional level versus just kind of like the conversation that we would have if we were just kind of two everyday hodlers who were just like, how do we secure our cold storage? Like, it's a different thing, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I love it. And man, the UX, the number of entrants, going to my glass half full side. So since 2018, we had Trezor and Ledger and Cold Card basically. Now we have a number of new entrants in the game. We have a number of new collaborative custody and multi-sig options. I mean, Sparrow is freaking phenomenal. Craig Raw, you are a genius, and thank you so much. I mean, there's just so many solutions out there that if you're a Bitcoiner getting in right now, it's so cool. Like the UX is so much better right now than it was back then.
Yeah, exactly. And especially the multi-sig flows are much, much better nowadays. Like, I think there's been real advancement there. And of course, like all the mini script stuff, right? Like Rob and Anchor Watch guys are all over that. But of course, things like Liana, like Kevin and the Liana team, Wizard Sardine is a company name, but they're doing a bunch of stuff there. I know the Keeper guys are using mini script as part of what they're doing also. So that's kind of really setting up interesting things for like inheritance or kind of giving you redundancy in your setup, using miniscript to give you kind of more advanced ways of securing your stack, and that can be applicable again at individual or at corporate level.
Not to take you off on a tangent, but one of those sayings like, what's something you believe in that most of the world does not believe in, or like that Peter Thiel question.
Yeah.
So I'll say one, which is, and you may not believe me, but I believe it to be true, which is, I don't think I'm gonna give my kids Bitcoin.
How come?
Okay. So everyone's like, oh, I'm acquiring Bitcoin for my kids and all this stuff. I'm like, guys, how many effed up kids are there that got a boatload of money as part of a trust and all this other stuff? And look, it's implied that they'll learn how to use Bitcoin or teach them about Bitcoin. I get that. But I guess my mindset is like, dude, if you're just going to give them like, and I think one Bitcoin is like what your aim. I mean, I joke like, okay, how many kids do you have? Okay, great. That's how many Bitcoin you should have. At least one kid should have one Bitcoin of the 21 million and whatever it is by the time, whatever. And then they should be just like passing that Bitcoin down and whatever. But I'm like, man, if one Bitcoin is like $10 million or $100 million, and then, okay, you pass away and this kid is 20, 30 years old and is like, hey, I just got $100 million. The incentive to work, the drive, the motivation, and all these things, I think you could be possibly doing a disservice to your son or daughter.
Yeah. So I think this is a big conversation. Like even kind of fiat families have to deal with this.
The same thing as a fiat family. Like how I created a trust that you got like $10 million, $20 million, great. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm at a job that's making 60 grand. I'm literally working 6 days a week. Now the glass half full is like, now you can go do something that you passionate about and like so on. Glass half empty is like, all right, I'm going to go drink beer and just freaking like bet on DraftKings and, whatever, fuck around.
But I think there's good ways to do it and bad ways, right?
Exactly.
Like I think if you look at the way, I've read some of these books and a few things here and there, and also from discussions with other people who have read some of those books, they've said some of these families do things a little differently. So they might sort of have certain structures around how they manage this or kind of groom the children to sort of be a successor and to kind of manage the family wealth, this kind of thing. So I'm curious, have you explored any of those things?
So not so much on the planning side a little bit, but more about the usage side, Stephan. So like, I mean, my kids are super young and I have a messed up brain that is always thinking about like the future, meaning like, I'm like, oh my gosh, they just ate that one thing and they're probably like, 15 years, it's going to affect them. But it's like, okay, how do I get them excited to use Bitcoin or learn about Bitcoin just in general? Should the one day that they are then want to go and work in XYZ industry or create Y job, that they want to be like, oh yeah, I need to earn my money is in Bitcoin, not in this fiat currency and so on. And then be able to learn about Bitcoin rather than just being given the Bitcoin, because I think is the key nuance in the inheritance conversation. I think is the key nuance.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how well you raise them. Obviously, most of us don't want to raise like a spoilt brat. But obviously easier said than done, right? If you
easier than said than done.
But I guess you have to look at how have fiat families done that for the last few hundred years, right? And I think there are some who've done it well and some who have not. And
but the majority have failed. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, I think if you look
Yeah,
at
I
history,
agree.
and that's my point,
It's
where
probably
like,
a high failure rate. I'm with you.
exactly, it's a high failure rate when you just, it's like government giving out money. Okay, high failure rate of like just giving the money without any accountability or continuing ed, if you will. It's like, hey, we're not going to give you money. We're going to give you the continuing ed and resources such that you make the decisions on your own accord to go live that life that you have always imagined.
Yeah, so I think it just comes. Yeah, I think part of that is, some of these families, maybe they send their kid off to work in one of the companies that they own.
Yeah, I would
but
love
they
that.
sort of try to groom them and sort of make them work for it and sort of work their way up.
Totally.
Or sort of say, okay, if he's done really well here, now promote him to some other role somewhere else and see how he goes with that and slowly step it up. I guess these are some of the things you could try. Again, like I said, it's not a perfect thing, but the idea is you're trying to tip the odds in your favor here.
Totally. And to go continue that thread, and especially thinking about the park. So the park is this physical place here in Nashville, and a place for Bitcoiners and freedom tech enthusiasts to work, learn, collaborate, and build. In Austin as well now. We're going to take some time before we like go into other locations. But I think by the time my kids, in like 15, 20 years that are in the workforce, it would be so cool if we had multiple park locations. And I'm like, hey, you're going to go spend the next 2 years in Cheyenne, Wyoming, or in St. Pete, Florida, or Raleigh, North Carolina, and you're going to go be the assistant operations lead, to this person, and you're going to learn how a Bitcoin park experience functions from every step of the way. And it'd be so cool if they like it and continue to move up, then they're like, okay, now you're going to go, we are opening a new campus in, Madrid, Spain. I'm making it up. You're going to go to Madrid for the next 2-3 years. And it's like, they got all these experiences, but they're earning it along the way.
Yeah.
Cause like, yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, I agree with you in the kind of the idea, but I'll tell you what, in 20 years' time, maybe 30 years' time, it might be done. There might not be a point of, Bitcoin Park might just be like Money Park at that point. You know what I mean?
No. Oh, can okay. So completely agree. And there is and I don't think I've told this publicly, but there is a high probability scenario. The brand will just become the park. So,
right. So then it becomes a generic thing, but maybe it's like about some other thing.
It'll be more focused on, so I'll tell a quick story. Everyone's like, it's interesting to see the policy folks really into Bitcoin now. Back in the day, like we were laughed at and ridiculed and, so on. Like everyone, even the current president said Bitcoin was a scam, and now rightfully has learned about it and so on, and now is really supportive of it. But like, again, back in the day, everyone was like daggers out, like, Rod, are you a con artist, scammer? And I'm like, what are you talking? You've known me for how long? What are you talking about? Anyways, but those folks on the policy side have been coming to our meetups. The teams have, and especially here in Nashville and in Tennessee, there's so many amazing people, and you got probably gonna be like, really? But in our public office, there are really good people. Like in Tennessee, I can't speak for other areas, but across the state government, the ECD, the mayor's office, even both our senators, their teams, the AG. Anyways, one of the teams came to our office and was like, Rod, we want to help make this place Silicon Valley 2.0, and I'm in Nashville. And I'm like, I'm not on board for that. So you got cool, good luck, but that not for me. And they're like, well, why? You got all this tech talent, people are flying in and so on. I'm like, dude, we want to make this Sovereign Valley, not Silicon Valley. We want to make this the best place for freedom tech enthusiasts. So, dude, they started changing their like the messaging and so on. It was actually really refreshing just to have the conversation and just make sure we're aligned on these different areas. But to go back to the park area, I could see, and that's where one of the reasons why I wanted to do this Imagine If, Stephan, which was because I do think Bitcoin is going to blend in my opinion, like these different protocols of the internet. Like we don't talk about SMTP, we don't talk about FTP, we don't talk about HTTP. It's just like the inner workings of the internet. We talk about the application layer and so on. And Bitcoin, the capital B, the blockchain, I think could blend in there. And we're going to still talk about Bitcoin, the reserve asset, until there is money on the exchanges such that it's fiat denominated. But I think there's so many cool things that are converging within the Bitcoin space. And three in particular are AI, energy, and the freedom tech tools that are being built on top of it. I mean, it is just freaking awesome.
The lead sponsor of this show is Bold, the banking platform designed for Bitcoiners. With the Bold virtual Visa debit card, you earn Bitcoin back on every purchase. The more Bitcoin you buy with Bold, the more sats back you get on the card. Buy $2,500 of Bitcoin and earn 3% sats back. Keep stacking with Bold to earn up to 10% sats back. Bold offers the industry's lowest fees on Bitcoin buys and sells with zero added spreads. When starting out, you can use Bold Wallet, which is managed by the team, but Bold is also supporting self-custody with Bold Vault, a 2 of 3 collaborative custody multisig for zero monthly fees. With Bold, you get your own FDIC-insured checking account to store and send fiat, pay bills, direct deposit your paycheck, and replace your legacy fiat bank. Sign up today and get zero fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Go to getbold.io. This episode is brought to you by CoinKite, the makers of my favorite Bitcoin hardware wallet, the Cold Card Q. Now, some people think self-custody is too hard, but it's really about taking responsibility for your Bitcoin wealth and understanding that self-custody gives you a true feeling of liberty. The Cold Card Q has a full keyboard and big screen. It's got 2 secure elements and a true air gap, allowing you to go fully air-gapped using QR codes from seed generation to transaction signing. You can power the device using 3 AAA batteries, so you don't even have to plug it into the wall for power. You can easily use it with Sparrow Wallet for PC or Nunchuck on mobile, and you can dial it into the right level of security and complexity that you choose. If you want a simple setup, just use 12 words and single signature. If you want passphrases, easy. If you want to add multi-sig or co-signing features, you've got those too. So go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get 10% off on your cold card or other devices and level up your self-custody today. Yeah, as you said, I think there is going to be, I think, we might reach a point where 20 or 30 years from now, maybe Bitcoin has already taken over, but the question then might be more about how do we protect our rights in the digital age, right? Like already we're starting to see a lot of this conversation now. Well, the latest one is kind of, oh, you need to KYC because we've got to protect the children, right? Like in the UK and in Australia, this is becoming a thing. And so obviously this is like the typical excuse for government control, right? Because
Totally.
people know, many of these nation states are not really doing a lot to protect children. But now all of a sudden they're pretending this is the way to protect children and therefore everyone needs to KYC. And it's sort of, historically, people didn't need to like KYC to do all kinds of things, right? But now, because things are done online, it's become kind of this authoritarian status nightmare. Or that seems to be the direction we're going, isn't it?
Yeah, well, hopefully not here in the United States. I'm not privy to like what's happening around the world. Honestly, I'm so like focused on health, family, and Bitcoin Park and just like this Bitcoin world. So I've tried to neutralize as much of the other. And by the way, that's like rightfully in your wheelhouse because both, you're from Australia and so on. But what I'll say is this to any of these politicians as well. What I would do is I would imagine, okay, who's my worst enemy? And in 4 years or whatever period of time, they're going to be in my seat and in this seat. How do I limit their potential abuse of power? Okay. Not like give more power to me because I'm literally going to give it to the next guy or girl who's coming in, who's on the other side of the aisle in terms of against me. So it's like, how do you just limit it such that it's more working for the local person? And that's where it's been crazy to see my own personal evolution. It's probably center left for sure growing up. And now just to be this uncategorized area where I can just speak to every little thing. And they're like, well, you said this over here and you said this over here. That doesn't organize in this specific box. And it's where, and I think more people are waking up to that. And Stephan, to go back to that point, that's where the freedom tech side, the tooling is so important. Why is it important? Having Nostr, being able to have freedom of speech, should you want to use that or not? Having Cashew and eCash, being able to use having bit chat as an example, like without internet communication and so on, just assuming, and I love my Bitcoin friends because they're like scary. They're always like 6 to 12 months ahead. They're like, all right, internet's going down. We need this, or this thing's
Right,
going down.
yeah.
I'm like, holy smokes, guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Let me jump in with a few things there. So
Yeah.
I think I actually had a quick chance to play around with BitChat recently at Baltic Honey Badger, right? Kalle was there and a bunch of us were playing around with it. I mean, I think it was really slick and fun to kind of play around with, but I'm not sure it's going to hit the mainstream anytime soon. I think there are open questions on like, how exactly does this protocol deal with spam, right?
Yeah.
Obvious example. And I asked Kalle that, like, to be honest. I'll be having him on the podcast soon as well. We'll chat about
good.
that, yeah, to be fair. But, you know, let's see what happens there. But the other thing, just to touch back on like what's happening kind of politically around the world, right? As you were saying, I think that is certainly a way many of us libertarians would think about, like, hey, Mr. Politician, you should think clearly about this because remember, the other side is going to have the same power that you put in now. But this kind of brings us back to and I'm sure you've heard it, the classic C.S. Lewis, right? It's of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victim may be the most oppressive, right? There's kind of more to it. But the point is, some of these politicians, and not just that, the people who vote for them, genuinely believe it's a good thing. You know, so I think that's actually also where we have to, let's say, on the freedom and privacy and whatever side of it, we have to help change hearts and minds, right? So that the average person doesn't think, oh, it's a good thing that Mr. Government, Mr. Regulator, Mr. Spy Agency is allowed to kind of just have this kind of unilateral surveillance and control power over everybody else, because that's really part of it. Yes, of course, the freedom tech is important. We need it. But we also have to sort of shift hearts and minds, right? We have to move that over to window. And I think that's also part of this conversation.
Totally. And that's where, you know, you may not think that meetups in real life scale or are even worth the time. But I would make the argument that they are arguably the most important thing you can do within your local community. Because if you're consistent about providing high signal Bitcoin information and you get it out to your local coffee shop owner, your local veterinarian, just the local community that are around you, and you strengthen those ties at a local level, you can do much more impact over time, in my opinion. And that's where the key is. So, because that's where, you know, we were talking about like state and these bigger treasury companies and the ETFs. That's cool and that's fine. But like where I see this thing going up and to the right continuously and it's not stopping. And, you know, there is some narrative at the, you know, the new pleb level, which is like, oh, I missed the boat. Oh, I just missed the boat. It's like, no, this is the boat. Like there, you should participate in one way, shape or form such that you can learn about this and get out of the shackles of the fiat hamster wheel.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, growing communities and things like this,
Sure.
and maybe even the narrative as well, because this is an interesting point that, you know, we should also consider, right? Coming back to what I was saying about, you know, Bitcoin winning, but maybe not the way we thought, you know, like just, you know, honestly asking, and I'm curious to hear how you would answer this, right? Is it possible that we are not as important as we think? You know, like,
that's 100% true.
You know,
that's,
like,
yeah.
You know, that we think this meetup we're organizing or these podcasts or articles or whatever we write and put out there, you know, that this thing is just kind of, it's a train that's been set in motion. You know, nothing stops this train, kind of like that. So maybe there's a little bit of that, and maybe there's only so much influence you and I have. I don't know. But at the same time, it's not going to stop me trying to grow Bitcoin communities and meetups and conferences and all that. But what do you think? Do you think local, how would you answer that in terms of local or global Bitcoin communities mattering or not?
So my time, capital, and reputation is all in growing my local Bitcoin community and producing high signal Bitcoin content globally.
Yeah.
And so I'm biased in my answer, what I'm about to say, which is I don't think me as an individual matters at any point in scale. However, that shouldn't stop you from doing it. Meaning like if you get paralyzed by like, okay, my blog post that I read on Substack, gets like 10 views or whatever, or maybe it gets this, and I don't know if it like you don't need the constant like feedback loop of likes and retweets and all this other stuff. I think if you're solving for the one individual, which is like yourself, at least this is how I think about it, which is, all right, worst case scenario, nobody shows up. Would I want to do this? That's what, like, honestly, like with Imagine If, and not just to use that as an example. So imagine if there's this summit of summits at the convergence of Bitcoin, AI, energy, and freedom tech. I'm just so curious about all those different areas. And I think like the TED Talks and these other like single conferences, they're just like missing the point a little bit and not just focused on these areas, especially as it relates to freedom tech. So I was like, all right, how do I, for my own itch that I want to hear from great people like you, which I'm super honored that you're coming back to Nashville for, to participate in both, to a number of other people like Kathy Wood, Dr. Laffer, Adam Back, Odell, Parker Lewis, like the list goes on, to be like, all right, let me ask you this one question. Imagine if, Bitcoin does become the monetary network of the world. What does the world look like? And so then it's like, all right, we locally produce that answer to that question, which is my own itch, which I am a nobody, but that's just something I'm curious about. And we produce and distribute that globally. And I'm very thankful for Kathy and the whole ARC team for partnering with me and lending their distribution arm and a number of other things. But then there's other people like you guys, you have such a strong voice and such a strong brand just to help get that message out there so that somebody that's sitting there being like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I just bought this Bitcoin ETF. I don't have Bitcoin right now. I don't get that. What do you mean? Like, now they're talking about this, not your keys, not your coins. Okay, now let me go down this next thing, and then the next thing, and then all of a sudden, I do think Bitcoin's this gravitational force that will get you to the end point of being a sovereign individual, especially as it relates to Bitcoin. So that's a long-winded way of saying we do not matter. However, we still need to do the work that gives you energy and gives you purpose that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it right. I guess let me give my take or my spin on it. I would say it matters to the extent that you can influence influential or elite people, right? Because if you can influence sort of someone who can really move the needle, then maybe you did maybe you really did help in some marginal way, right? Like let
me go on the flip side there. Okay. Yeah. I'll tell another story. Yeah. We started the park, and then some of these Vanderbilt students started coming. And they actually had a really strong Vanderbilt blockchain club. And I was like, you guys are the only ones that can say Vandy blockchain at Bitcoin Park. I'm not going to troll you guys and so on. I want you guys to be here, but you guys are the only ones. Okay. And these kids were just sharp. I mean, super sharp. One of them, Stephan, goes and gets an internship with Summer of Bitcoin, and then goes and works on PayJoin and BDK for the summer.
Yeah.
Then goes and gets an internship in New York at Wolf, which is just freaking phenomenal. And then now has graduated from Vanderbilt and is working full-time at Galaxy. Dude, this guy knew nothing about Bitcoin. Comes to Bitcoin Park, running, I gave him a cold card. A shout out to NVK for giving us a handful to give out to students. And he's just like on his own mission. I mean, these younger kids, they dabble into the meme coins because it's just fun. It's like it's like the gambling apps that people use. I mean, it's just like, as long as you can discern between like, okay, that is just straight gambling, and then this is like sovereign freedom money, that's the key. So I'll say this. Like that one, I keep going back to that. And then another one, and say what you will about Coinbase. He's now the product manager at Coinbase, working on as a pretty big role as a young guy. And then there's I can go through a list of all these other kids, but now they're adults, obviously, that have just come to the park that they're not influential. They're just random plebs like us.
That's a fair point, but let's say they later went on to be influential. You know what I mean? Like you influence this person and they went on to become influential.
That's why I don't think at the qualification level, Stephan, that you need to overemphasize, in my opinion. So it'll be like, okay, I need to go talk to the president. I'm not going to talk to anybody until I talk to.
Of course.
Yeah. But it's like, have the reps come back to the things that give you energy at the end of the day. Don't do stuff that takes away your energy. What fills your cup? What gives you energy? Me around amazing people that make me better, that make me think better, that make me a better husband, make me a better father. Those are the people that I want to continue to surround myself by. And for the most part, those are just Bitcoiners. I mean, straight up. And so that's why I love going to meeting Bitcoiners and hanging with them.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with you there. I think, sometimes I guess sometimes I get jaded about it, right? Because I've been around for so long and I feel like, I barely get to anyone. But then I just keep putting out podcasts and articles and whatever, and somehow magically people end up, because you never know who's listening, you never know who's reading. And sometimes it's like, even if you didn't actually get like a very high number of downloads or listens or reads or whatever, hits on an article, actually you reach someone who really did matter.
Exactly.
And they really did move the needle somehow.
That's why I do think we're going to go into this new world where, especially Bitcoin giving you the financial freedom not to worry about being beholden to these, like, and look, you should have your own personal KPIs and dashboards of what your own goals are. That's amazing. But you don't need to be like, oh man, I got to get to 100,000 downloads, or I got to get to this number. So then you kind of cut corners that takes away your energy or your focus. But if you can compound on the things that you're focused on that give you energy and that you really truly love, that work will be differentiated from anybody else, because you can't beat like, what's the quote? Maybe it's by Mike Tyson or somebody. It's like, you can't beat somebody that doesn't give up and that loves what they're doing. Like, you just cannot beat that person in that field. They're just not going to give up, and they love what they're doing. And if you don't love it, you're going to probably give up. And so for your podcast, which I am just such a fan of, and all the stuff, I'm just going to tell you emphatically, you're crushing it, and you got to keep going.
Hey, thanks, man. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a similar thing with Bitcoin Park. Like, you're building up a brand over time. You just keep showing up, and you just sort of build up a brand over time. People know you, and then that you're sort of trading off your reputation. And on that, people will be like, okay, yeah, they did a good job with this other event, so I'll give them a chance. I'll come to this other thing, or I'll support them in this other way, or I'll become a member, or I'll do something to help out, right? And so that's kind of how it often happens, because it's like consistency, longevity, quality. These things really matter, right? If you've done that. One other thing that came to my mind, and I think it's topical, so I'd be interested if you have a take. Yeah. We are starting to see now some of these stablecoin companies actually launching their own chain, right? Because you were talking about the blockchain group at Vanderbilt, right? So Tether, Circle, and Stripe have all kind of somewhat recently said, hey, we're going to put out our own chain. What do you think this means for various altcoins, and what do you think it means for Bitcoin?
So
if you have a take.
I mean, I don't really have that big of an opinion. I haven't like researched much about it, but I did see something along Stripe doing their own, like, I think it's called Tempo or something like that.
Arc, I think, but yeah, go on. Yeah.
Oh, it's called Arc. I don't know. What's it called?
I mean, I'm asking now because it's topical, right? It just came out right now. I mean, I'll give you my answer if you're interested. Like, I think it's basically bearish for the so-called utility token thesis of Ethereum or Tron 100%. Or these various things, right? Because Paolo came out the other day from Tether saying, I think it was like 40% of the transfers on these shit chains is Tether transfers anyway. Yeah. So if part of the thesis is like, you need to use these shit coins and shit chains to transfer stablecoins, but the stablecoins are like, hey, we're going to create our own chain. What does that mean for these utility tokens? To me, it's like, it reinforces the Bitcoin maxis who are basically saying, look, you need a reason to hold the token. Bitcoin has a reason because it's the future of money. There's only 21 million of them. And these altcoins, this utility token thesis is bunk. That's how I see it.
So you said it much better than me. Competition is such a good thing. And that's where I say, okay, if, going back to the earlier point, is this a good thing for Bitcoin and all this stuff? All these areas to attack Bitcoin are a good thing to strengthen Bitcoin, right? And so I think we need to be more vocal about preserving our ability to self-custody Bitcoin, to transact permissionlessly as well as censorship resistant as possible. And all those properties we need to defend fully throated. but get your popcorn out because it's freaking awesome to see these other like chains to compete against, the Ethereum, Chainlink, and all these other guys that pontificate about, that their chains and the usage and utility of those chains, because they're going to go compete directly there, and they're going to bring down the fees. There's going to be less adoption, less usage, because they're going to just go amongst themselves and just build a better experience. And so it's just all about competition. Like what are you competing for? And Bitcoin is competing in an 8 billion person TAM, total addressable market, that is around two things: a medium of exchange and a store of value. For 8 billion people. I mean, when invest, like people are like, oh, you should invest in this and invest in that. I mean, now I don't even I don't have the mental time to even think about it, because I'm just like, the TAM is too small and the opportunity is just too small compared to Bitcoin, just straight up. So I'm not, we'll see how that all plays out. I actually am becoming a little bit more bullish on Lightning, and then all the ways that Lightning is being implemented across the board. That's really interesting. Like even with what Primal's doing. It's just I'm more bullish on that front.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the rise of real L2s. Like I commented on this in my recent Substack post, but we are now starting to see production L2s other than Lightning. So we're seeing Arc and Spark, and different visions of Arc as well. So I think the interesting thing, I might just share this as an update for listeners, is at Baltic Honey Badger, they were trialing Arc in the background for some of the merchants. And so,
tell me about that.
So for the merchant, he just has like a simple, Arc or Arcade wallet, and basically on the front end for the end payer, the user who's buying his coffee or whatever, he can pay a Lightning invoice or directly pay with Arc if they choose. And in the background, what's happening is Bolts.exchange is swapping that Lightning into an Arc VTXO, virtual transaction output, and it's kind of held in that way. And then what the merchant can do later is when he's exiting to main chain Bitcoin to get a UTXO, a Bitcoin UTXO, he can kind of batch exit. So, but the point of all this is like, look, I'm explaining some of the, kind of the interior stuff of it, but actually for the end user, it's very simple. Like the complexity's in the background, you just hit send, you just hit receive, and it's done.
Exactly.
So these are some of the things that we're seeing now, and we are going to start seeing, and it kind of uses Lightning as the lingua franca, or the kind of the common language, or the way to send things across different L2s, but it's allowing a much better user experience. And I think that's also a really cool thing. And I think Spark is going to be an interesting one also to see. There's been some chatter about that. Obviously, the Light Spark, and I think it's a sub-company of them who are making Spark, which is kind of like a special version of a state chain with certain different assumptions and things like that. But point is, we're seeing better ways to even do medium of exchange, right? So I'm bullish on store of value and medium of exchange for Bitcoin.
Totally. So this goes back to the part, like, okay, you just mentioned Arc, you mentioned Spark, you mentioned, there's so many things. I cannot even keep up with it. But what do I do? I'm on the left side of the bell curve in terms of smarts.
Oh,
You're
I'm
on the right
same,
side.
Dude.
No. I'm on the left side. So I'm like, all right, you know what? How do I get concentration here of the best people and just get these type of topics and questions answered for me from the best subject matter experts in the world? Okay, in March of 26 right now, or maybe April, I forget which month, we're planning the Bitcoin Payment Summit. It was like our version of the Lightning Summit. We're making that the Bitcoin Payment Summit, such that bring the Arcs of the world, bring the like all these folks, and then like there's gonna be show and tell, there's gonna be panel discussion, like all of that stuff, but very curated just on this topic, and have like about 150 of some of the best people in the world there. So that's what we're trying to do with the Custody and Treasury Summit in September. And that's where we're just, even the grassroots behind me, which is the meetup organizers. I think there's just the focus there on that, so that we're not going into all of these different rabbit holes in Bitcoin, because it's so amazing. I mean, like, we can go into so many rabbit holes at any conference, but at a summit, you could just stay in this area and just be like, okay, I'm going to really deep dive into this over these 2 days.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's great to see that. Sometimes you get, there's all kinds of reasons for different events, right? And I think there are so many. And I think that's probably another elephant in the room for you to address, just for listeners as well, because they might be like, oh, what, another event? Like this, how many 100 Bitcoin events now every year? What's special about this one? And to be fair, different geographies, different specializations, different, there's different ways to slice and dice these different events. You don't have to go to all of them, pick your spots. But how would you answer that for people in terms of the value add and let's say the USP of some of the events that you're organizing?
Totally. So, it's similar to the podcast. I do think more is better. And you'll be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. You're the one that's hosting like hundreds of meetups, workshops, and summits every year. And I actually do think more is better, because as a producer, what you're producing will either work or not work, And I do think there's so many people out there that want to learn about Bitcoin. So it's not like, oh, even if there's like conflicting dates and topics and so on, ours at Bitcoin Park, we're limited by the space that we have. So ours are probably maximum 150 people at all times. So for me, I literally go and vet every single person that's on there, and I send them an invite, to come. And it's not so much like, oh, you need to be this type of person or that. I'm like, look, you're going to spend like anywhere from $500 to $2,000 on a ticket. I want to make sure this is the best experience you have, because even at our meetups and our summits, I always start out with my opening remarks and say, I take a lot of pride and responsibility in making this the best Bitcoin experience you have all year. And here's why I believe that's going to be the case for these next 2 days. Boom, boom, boom. And that's why I also like, Stephan, that we have all these free and open meetups, such that you can get a taste and a flavor of all these great like honestly, like a lot of our meetups are comparable to paid tickets that you would go buy at a conference. And so I want to have like different tracks for different folks to experience these deep knowledge in these areas. And then two is, supporting the local communities. Like, I do think if there's no experience that's local to you, you should kind of create what you want there, whether that's a meetup, workshop, or summit. And you're not, yes, in Nashville, it's really kind, and I'm honored that people fly in. You're flying in from Dubai, and like other people are flying in. So I, again, take a lot of pride and responsibility in making this the best time for you. You're sacrificing time away from your family. It's not lost on me at all. I think that's the area where it's like, okay, you're in Cheyenne, Wyoming, or Dubai or Madrid or Prague, wherever. Creating those local experiences to make it easy, but making it the best, I think will go a long way. So, and by the way, we also need more Bitcoin signal. Like, you want to talk about more, there's a lot of Bitcoin events. There's probably a boatload of crypto, altcoin, whatever events that are happening across the board. So like, all those people are like, well, Rod, I went to this event and they're telling me about this yield product where I now just can, what's called staking, and I could put this here, but I just got to, KYC and, give up this, but I'm getting 10%. It's like, I'm like, hold up, pump the brakes. That's not the game. So, I would just say, come out and check it out for yourself. If you have the time and bandwidth.
And look, I just want to reiterate, I agree. I think, obviously, I'm coming for a reason. I think there's a lot of things that people can learn from coming to the right kinds of events. And that's where, I think, listeners and viewers, make sure you share the events that you really think are valuable. Because, look, it's so easy for people to get sucked into some of these shitcoin rabbit holes. Think about how many of our friends, like if you're a listener now, you're probably a Bitcoin evangelist or someone who's like really into this. And how many of your friends and family have come to you about some random shitcoin, being like, oh, this other coin or this other thing, or, in the years gone by, like the BSV conferences and things like, there were massive conferences, right?
Exactly.
They got like thousands of people to these events. Meanwhile, there are like high signal Bitcoin events they're struggling to break 500 people. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's just, there's a massive disconnect,
Yeah. If I can, and I'm curious to know your thoughts. So, you mentioned Baltic Honey Badger. I would recommend going to Riga once in your life, if you can experience that, minimum once in your life. Nifty's Base 58. I would recommend, if you're technical, events, doing that one. Like, these I actually wrote a post like, this is, by the way, I want to write more like under this like first sentence, which is, this is dumb, but hear me out. And it's like, conferences suck. And I kind of explain why I think conferences suck, because they just make them vanilla. But like if you do something like how Nifty's creating these themes in different locations and making it very for the technical community, that's freaking awesome. When you got like Honey Badger, which is like a core cypherpunk, like really Bitcoin focused experience, that is freaking awesome. I actually went to Prague. I thought these guys did a great job as well, the BTC Prague guys. So to your exact point, the ones that are doing great job, I would just be singing their praises, from the rooftops. And I think we all should be doing that as well.
Right, because, and I mean, I'm with you there. Like, I would slightly disagree a little on some of the big events. Like, I would say there's a reason for some of these big events too. Like, I just think everything has its place. Because, I see it like I should go because, look, there might be a big event. There might be a big audience or people who might watch that live stream. And if they have a chance to hear your message, that might help them, And look, here's the other thing. There is a bit of an eternal September problem, right? Like that's been around, and look, that's before you or I even turned up. It was eternal September in this space. So having people who are there to, let's say, reinforce the, hey, not your keys, not your coins message, that's valuable. But at the same time, like I think support the people who you think are doing a good job. And
exactly.
Try to share their events, their podcasts, their newsletters, whatever, or their communities. Like just try to get people going along to them. I think it'll help at least sort of maintain a certain kind of ethos. Of course, some of that will change, and maybe not everyone's receptive to the message. So be it. But do what you can is how I see it.
Totally. And just to echo that, I think there are like 3 currencies in life. There's time, capital, and reputation.
Right.
And I think we focus a lot on time and capital. And by the way, shout out to Wences Caceres. Like he's one of those guys that really got me into like going deep into Bitcoin. Met him like once for like 2 minutes, but like his podcast early on changed my life. But like I think we devalue the reputation part. Like we just throw that away. It's like, fuck it. I'm going to go here pontificate about this company or that company because they're giving me like, a $2 ref link. And I'm like, guys, especially if you're a meetup organizer, you are, whether you like it or not. Actually, somebody sent me this article, which I kind of now believe, which is the new influencers are the community organizers, and you carry so much weight amongst your local community. You, Stephan, carry so much weight with this podcast. Odell, Marty, Preston, Dan, I mean, the list goes on. And I'm so proud, the people you associate with, the mission that you're on, and so on. And look, it's tough. Like, I'm not going to agree with all the things you think like. I mean, you're not going to agree with everything I like, but like it's like rooted in a respect, and it's rooted in respect and like a more of a mission focus that I'm 100% on board with.
Excellent. Well, look, let's leave it there. Closing thoughts, and also obviously tell people about the upcoming Treasury and Custody Summit and Imagine If. Give us the dates for that and where people can find you.
Absolutely. And again, Stephan, thank you for participating in both. Both are, knock on wood, going to be a banger. For the Custody and Treasury Summit, that's September 17th and 18th. Just go to our meetup page, or actually go to the Custody and Treasury website. Which is Bitcoin Park. We'll put it in the show notes, but bitcoinpark.com/custody-treasury, or go to our meetup page on Nashville. And then there's just join the wait list, and then we'll go through that whole list. And then Imagine If it's September 19th and 20th. So both are in Nashville.
It's basically 4 days in a row, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I want to monopolize everybody's time. So, but that one, it's a summit of summits at the convergence of Bitcoin, AI, energy, and freedom tech. It's in partnership with ARK Invest. So Kathy Wood, very kind that she's going to be in town. So is Dr. Laffer, Odell, you, Stephan, Adam Back, and a whole number of amazing other Bitcoiners. So if you go to bitcoinpark.com/imagine if, you can learn more about the speakers, some of our topics. There's a request by invitation because the ticket prices, the space is limited and the ticket price is a little higher than our other experiences. So I just want to make sure this is the right experience for you. But dude, this was so fun for being the first time on your podcast. Honored, man.
Hey man, well, hey, I'm a fan of what you're doing. Listeners, please do support Rod. Check out the events. Share this episode, of course. And let's leave it there. Thanks for joining me, Rod.
Thank you, man.